Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Frédéric Rivain. I'm the CTO of Dashlane. And, well, what is that? Who knows Dashlane, by the way? Raise your hand. Half the room. Oh, that's not too bad. We are a password manager. We help you manage your identity, your credentials, your payment means online, and we try to do it in a secure and simple way. And I'm here to talk to you about our organization as a product engineering team and how we evolved that organization in time. Just to give you a bit of context, we were founded 10 years ago. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. We have 150 employees between Paris, New York, and Lisbon. And it's both a consumer product. We have a big B2C base, but also a B2B product. You can have Dashlane at home and at work. And to give a sense of size, today we have about 10 product engineering teams. So what's our agile story? Here was how we start. It's kind of an iterative evolution. We learn as we grow. We try to adapt to our needs and to our current scale. Of course, 10 years ago, we were not 150. And there are various states of maturity. We started originally kind of in the garage mode. That was the early days of Dashlane. Then at some point in 2014, the team said, okay, we need to do something about it. We are not structured. We're doing things in the wrong way and so on. So they went to the Scrum book, because this is usually the starting point when we want to put in place an agile methodology. 2015, a new thing, they had started having agile teams that were running in silos. So they said, okay, we still need some overall vision for the company. So they put in place a roadmap and a portfolio of all the projects that they were running. I arrived in 2015. That's when I joined Dashlane. 2016, we started talking about OKRs. Is everybody familiar with OKRs? Yes, no, yes, no. So OKR is let's say, a goal and performance framework. We'll talk about it later. It's called Objective and Key Results. It's coming from Google. I will explain more afterwards. 2017, this is when we switched to feature teams. We used to be to have an iOS team, a Windows team, an Android team based on the applications that we had built for Dashlane, and then we did the switch to feature teams. Same thing. We'll talk about this switch. And 2018, we evolved yet again that organization and put in place what we call the mission teams that I'll explain later on. And right now, we'll see. But we're in the middle of thinking about our next move. And as you can see, like every year, there was a big change and a big evolution in the team. And that's an important part to the way we do things. We try to try new things, learn from them, and adapt and iterate on them. I'm going to talk about half-baked agility. And that's a nice chocolate cake. This is a quote from Felipe Castro. If you're interested in OKRs, agile organization and strategy, you should take a look, because he's an interesting agile coach. And what he says is that most people just do a half-baked agility because they just do operational agility. So when you look at an agile stack, Scrum, Kanban, all the project methodology that are based on agile principles, that's just about operations, how you run the teams, how you run the day-to-day, and so on. But that's not all there is to agility. You need to go up the stack, you need to talk about tactics, and usually when you talk about tactics and how you define which project I want to do, how you want to do it, and why you do it, you're going to talk about lean approaches. And then when you go up, then you talk about strategy. How do I define the strategy of my company, of my startup, within an agile approach? And of course, at the end of the day, it's also a lot about culture. How do I make sure that my culture, my organization is able to have an agile approach to everything we do? And of course, that's not easy. Most of the time, we start from the bottom and we try to go up, and there's a lot of effort required to get there. Running agile operations is kind of simple. I mean, most people that say that they're doing agile, they're doing that. They have like those cycles of production in an agile fashion. Most of the time it's Scrum or a mix of Scrum and Kanban, it doesn't really matter. You try to wrap it into a cycle of Lean, where you try to find the best way to formalize projects, prioritize projects, then run them and iterate on implementing them and assess the result at the end of the day. So that's a good mix of a Lean overall approach within a Scrum cycle. But the problem is that just staying to that organization is that at the end of the day, you have kind of the perfect feature factory. And that's not what you want to do. You don't want to just ship features as an engineering team. You just don't want to be just tracking how you deliver features. Because of course you need to deliver features, but that's not what brings value to the company. That's not what makes an impact on how you get business progress. So how do you go up in that half-baked agility pyramid. How do you go to the strategy level? How do you move up the ladder? Well, first thing is about OKR. So I will share, of course, the slides afterwards with everybody at NewCrafts, but I put an appendix with more about OKRs. Just in a very summarized version, OKR was a framework built by Intel in the 70s, so it's an old framework. And John Doerr, who was an investor at Intel, who was also an investor at Google, brought the framework to Google, and Google promoted it, and now it's used by most Silicon Valley companies. It's about defining an objective that is qualitative, an ambitious objective, and then finding the right KPI to measure it. And the fact that you measure how you get to the success of that objective is very important. And the main goal of this is to make sure that what you're looking for is maximum value and not maximum output. It doesn't matter to produce a lot if it doesn't bring value to the company. So let's look at really the output and the outcome of what you produce rather than the production machine as such. Interrupt me if there are questions or if it doesn't make sense. Feel free. So we are Dashlane. We are trying to improve our organization, and we are looking for the right organization for us, which is not, of course, easy. Originally, like I said, we had a legacy platform. We had a desktop application, an iOS application, web stack, and so on. We hired the first iOS developer at the time. He started building the iOS application for Dashlane, and then he hired more people around him, and that created an iOS application. That works well when you're small. That works well when you have a good line of business, strong focus. When you start having too many people, when you start having different lines of business, that hurts a lot. We had issues of synchronization between the platforms and the teams. We had inconsistency in the product. The focus was more technical and not business-oriented enough. So we really wanted to change that. And we didn't reinvent the wheel. There was a lot that has been talked about this. So we looked at the feature team framework that has been promoted a lot by Spotify. And we built cross-functional teams. We started mixing people together. We built teams, a designer, an iOS developer, a backend developer together, and so on, with the idea, okay, you own a scope and you need to produce for that scope and get to some results. And we started with scopes that were kind of a business scope. And that was kind of the obvious way to do it. We had a team that was focused on acquisition. How do you acquire more users for Dashlane? There was a team that was focused on conversion. How do I make free users becoming premium users? And so on and so on. And that was a good change. I don't know what are my slides. Yes, those are the type of business focus that you had: acquisition, conversion, retention, and so on. So that worked well. It was a big change because, of course, the iOS developers that used to be working all together in their small family of iOS developers, they were not distributed into the different teams. That's not an easy change, but it went pretty well, and we started running that way. But we wanted to transition again because at some point we realized that having a business scope is very complicated for our product team. It gave for a scope that was kind of too wide, too broad. How do you work on retention? Retention is a big word with a lot behind retention. You can do a lot of things to impact retention. The metrics that are associated to retention and the OKR that were associated to it were very long term in the end, and that was not really the best way to focus. So what we said, okay, we have those business teams today. They work pretty well, but not perfectly. We don't want to come back to a world with project teams. It's not nice for a product engineering team to be given a project and say, okay, just deliver the project. We don't want to go back to the feature factory mode. How can we find a compromise in between? And so we ended up defining what we call the mission team today. So to give you a sense, I was talking about retention, increased retention, that there are lots of ideas, lots of different things that you can do to impact retention. And the indicators are very lagging, so it's complicated to measure. On the other hand, if I tell you build feature X, well, there is no room for ideas. It's success is related to delivery of the project and the results and the impacts it will bring. So that's not what we want to do. And in the middle, we kind of found, okay, your mission is to get users to put more passwords into Dashlane. That's a very focused mission. Of course, there are a lot of things we can do to achieve that mission, but you can measure that today, on average, users have so many passwords in Dashlane, and when you're done, you want to achieve so many plus whatever % of progress. So success is clear, but you still have a lot of margin to operate as a team. And the scope is not business only. You can have missions that are related to design. You can have missions that are more technically focused. You can have missions that are, of course, business focused. You can have more product involvement into the way missions are designed. It makes for a more cohesive team where everybody feels that they have some ownership and they can contribute at that level to the overall success of the mission. The team really feels kind of empowered and autonomous to decide, okay, here's what my mission I need to achieve. Here's how I measure it, and then I'm free to decide how I want to do it. So that was the change we did. So we still had those cross-functional teams, and mission team 1, 2, 3, we had kind of that sort of metrics organization with a mix of engineers, QA, designers, and so on. And depending on the type of mission, you can have missions that were like more mobile-oriented, so we would put iOS and Android developers in those missions, or missions that are more back-end oriented, so we would put mostly back-end developers in there. So this gives a lot of flexibility and the ability for the business to adapt itself. So that's pretty good. One key criteria that we put in place to make sure that we keep the teams co-located, because otherwise then you have more difficulty to coordinate everybody across locations. But you still have that kind of double matrix, so it's important to have both the mission team that the day-to-day run and keep the community of practices, as it's called, of all the Android developers together so that they can focus on the platform as well. Yeah. So how do we run it today? We have a and that's how we do it, but we'll see if we want to change it. But today we have a 3-week cadence, which is a bit weird, but we do 2 weeks mission sprints, which is the normal mission sprint. And then we alternate with 1 platform week where the developers from the same platform will get back together to work on platform-specific stuff. If I think back to my iOS example, there's WWDC coming very soon, early June, the big Apple conference for all developers. And of course, as always, they will announce the new versions for iOS, and we'll have to make sure that we are compatible. So that's specific iOS work that needs to happen, and they will work on that type of stuff during that platform week. We have quarterly reviews. We call them the rodeos. The goal is to review the progress of the mission. Is the mission going in the right direction? Should we stop it because they've achieved their result and it's a success, or because they are never going to achieve it? How do we staff the different missions? Should we put more people, less people? How do we adapt? So that's a big meeting that we have on a quarterly basis. And it's very basic in terms of tooling. Well, we use Jira and Confluence like many people, but we do everything with it. From a product perspective, we also use Product Board. If you don't know about Product Board, it's quite a nice tool to get input from customers and try to aggregate all the feature requests from everybody. And in terms of communication, we've tried to decorrelate the communication so that each team is quite autonomous. So we still have a bi-weekly sprint reviews at the end of the sprint, like in usual Scrum. We have a page in Confluence that's called the Sprint Dashboard, where the product owner will just put a short summary of what has happened in the mission sprint, and then the rest of the company that's not directly involved into the operations can get a sense of what's happening out there. And we use the town hall, so we have town halls every 2 weeks where we gather everybody for half an hour, and we'll use those as well to do demos in front of the whole company. Of course, I talked a lot about trying to have impact and to look for values, and even though that mission team framework is a bit better, it's still a challenge to really look for value and not look for just delivering features. So a few principles that we try to make sure that the teams have in mind. One of them is that, well, we know the starting point. We want to achieve that mission, and today here are the metrics that we use to measure our mission. And we know where we want to end, but as you know, that's not a straight line, so we need to find the right way to achieve that mission. And it's a lot about making sure that we iterate. So we do discovery with our research team. We do a lot of work with the data team to gather data, to understand how the user thinks about the problem we're trying to solve and so on. We build a little something, we put it in production, we test it, we look at the data that's coming back, and then we iterate, we improve the experiment, or we throw it away if it doesn't work. But it's really important that each sprint is a way for you to get some value. And of course, that value can be different sort of value. There's the main important value is adoption. The new feature that you just shipped is being used by actual users. But it can be also learning. We spent the sprint to do a design sprint, for instance, to prototype and to do focus groups and to do work with users to learn from them. It can be internal discovery. Sometimes you need to do some technical research to make sure that you're capable of actually building the thing. You need to invest into technology and so on. But that's still internal learning for you. And then the last one, which is still an important one, is risk management. Sometimes you don't do things because they will bring value, but because if you don't do them, then you will lose value. So an example is things like GDPR stuff. Okay, nobody wants to do GDPR, but at the end of the day, you need to do it, otherwise you're at risk. Or other compliance stuff, or that type of stuff. This is just to give you a sense of how we build those. So that's a mission prioritization framework. So at the top, you can see one example of OKR. So the mission is to get more passwords, like I used in my example. And here we are talking about increasing desktop week 4 engagement rate from 18 to 30%. So you can see that's the measure, the starting measure and the ending measure. And then the team brainstormed as a team, and they defined a lot of different experiments and features that they could build. All the things in bold are actually things they wanted to test. And then it's up to them to define, okay, which one do I do first, depending on the effort and the value it will bring. How do I run this as a team? But it's basically a one-pager for the team to give a sense to the stakeholders about, okay, here's how we want to run things. We talked a lot also about 10% and 10x, because the problem with measuring things like this is that you can have the tendency to try to only optimize and try to only get more % of optimization, but at some point you also need to try and disrupt and do more innovation. So this graph is an example of Kodak, which of course all you know was very good at optimizing. They was continuously focusing on 10% optimization, and we know how it ended for them. It was not a great story at the end of the day. Whereas the other example that I use is the NASA. That's a picture from 2014, and the picture 1 year later after a lot of optimization on their camera and lenses. So that's like 10x improvement. So my point is just that as part of, let me skip this, as part of the work of the mission team, you need to work on both ends of the spectrums. You need to have things that are 10% optimization, and there are things that are more long-term bets where there are more risk, there is more risk, but you hope that you can achieve more disruption. And it's a lot about finding the things that are that you know today. Okay, I'm pretty sure that today my iOS users will want me to autofill password when using apps, because that's kind of a base scenario. So let's optimize that scenario. But if I go to the other end of the spectrum, maybe one day users on iOS will want to autofill passwords using the voice or using Siri or something. Maybe, maybe not. We don't really know, because it's not like obvious that I would say, okay, Dashlane, can you log me in automatically on Facebook? Here's my password, blah, 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 blah. So this we need to research. We need to spend time with our users to make sure that there is a real value here. But maybe there's a big opportunity for us to do more of a 10x impact than a 10% impact. And that's I'm really insisting on this one, because this is not easy for a team to be able to balance both, to both balance the small optimization and the things that you know will bring a little, and the things that are really more like big bets. And so 4 key takeaways, and then maybe you can take questions. 1, very important, trust your teams. They know what to do. So give them the guidance, give them the missions and so on, and then let them find the ways to achieve those missions. Today, if I think about when I joined Dashlane, we still had most of the exec team participating in sprint reviews and so on. This is no longer the case. Now the teams are really free to run their life on their own, and it's a great way to run a team. Experiment all the time. That's very important. You don't know how things will turn out in production, so put things in production, test them, of course. Don't roll out to 100% of users, especially if you have a big user base. Learn from it and really aim to push things fast in production. Yet again, get the right mix of 10% optimization and 10x innovation. It's quite a hard balance to find, but it's important to focus on that. Otherwise, you will fall on only one side or the other side. And and last but not least, of course, assess for value. What matters at the end of the day is not the fact that we've been able to ship that feature in production at the right time. It's what happens after that. Did we get the value we expected from that feature? Did we invest the right effort into building something that mattered for the business? I think that's it. And of course, you can try Dashlane. I gave you a little promo code here for 6 months free of Dashlane. It's a very nice tool. You should try it. And I have a lot of appendix with the OKR and so on, so I'll share the slides so you can get them. Any questions?
Does this method fit for every size of teams?
I believe so. I mean, as long as you have a team that works on something, you can be in that framework, and you can define the mission you want to work on, make sure you have the right focus to achieve that mission, and more importantly, you can make sure that you can measure what you're doing to know that you've achieved what you wanted to achieve. Otherwise, it's just a random effort. So.
I got a question because we thought of the same of the mission teams, but we have a problem with the missions that are like transversal, touching a few teams, and we are blocked on this. So do you have experiences on this or maybe feedbacks?
So even because the mission is too big and then you need more teams to work on it?
Yeah, something like, let's say we have an API. We need to put an API and we're switching from technologies. So it's touching everybody, basically, most of the people, and it's kind of the hot topics to say that it's one mission because it's the mission of all the company.
The way we try to do it is we try to limit the dependencies between teams, because otherwise it's way more complicated and then you need to start synchronizing everybody and so on. So we try to split the teams in ways that make them autonomous, even though of course there can be a relationship. To give you an example, of course, if I have a team that's focused on improving the onboarding flow on the web for users, it will impact teams that are working further down the funnel and so on. So I need to be sure that that team has enough focus so that the next team doesn't work on the same thing as them, otherwise they will collide together. But the good thing, I think, with that framework is that you have the flexibility to adapt the teams the way you want. So if you have an API to build, they will put maybe at first more backend developers to start building the web services and so on. And at some point, you will need your clients to implement the API, so we'll build a team that is more cross-platforms. So, but it's better to have a sequence of shorter mission teams with more specific focus of mission rather than have a big mission which is just okay, let's build an API, because that's too broad and then you'll get into that type of issues.
Okay, thanks.
It's similar how you work on mission organization if the mission covers more than one system.
What do you mean?
You have a mission and to deliver to get to this objective of the mission, you have to modify more than one system.
But that's fine, as long as you put the right people within the team, they can work on different systems.
You will have two PO, for example?
Two POs?
Two product owner, because they're more than...
No, like I said, I don't think you should have that. Otherwise, then you start having teams that are too big and so on. So you should find a way to split your mission so that there are more focused missions. And it's not always easy, but I would strongly encourage to do that. And it's better to have a sequence of shorter missions that are that brings you to your own vision, to your full vision, rather than try to go to the whole thing in one block. So if it's too big, you need to split it essentially, and you need to make sure that you can have different mission teams working parallel on some part of your end goal and your vision, but they should try to not collide and should have a delimited scope. Otherwise, then I mean, it depends on your case, but then you start having missions that put things in production that impact the other one, and then they screw the metrics together, or at some point they don't really know if they can do that or not that because it's going to trespass the other one, the other mission. So it's
Okay.
Definition and preparation of the mission is important.
Okay, and in average, what is the duration of a mission? How many sprints?
Well, for us, it varies a lot. It can be from like 3 sprints, so essentially 6 to 8 weeks, or up to 9 months if it's a big mission. Right now, we have a mission where we are rebuilding from scratch our Windows application. So we are rebuilding 10 years of application. So of course, that takes more time.
Okay, thank you.
What kind of workflow are you using? Does that have like feature branch, trunk-based development? Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter. And at Dashin, we have a lot of everything because we have Android developers that are working with their own mechanism. There are iOS developers that are working in iOS type of release pipeline. We have Windows developers, macOS developers, and we have a lot of different platforms, technical platforms. So they all have their specifics. They all have their way of releasing, which you need to take into account when you want to ship features. But they all do their stuff. I think we're out of time. Sorry. We can talk afterwards. Thank you very much.